So when I say Polaroid, what types of cameras that make you think of? How about these? Polaroid One Step, looks familiar, right? Or, how about a, Sun 600 type of camera? These are pretty typical. Also, how about like an SX70 as well? These are what you would normally think of, right? Well, how about this bad boy right here? The Polaroid 600SE. What? Why is it the best Polaroid camera ever made? Probably instant camera ever made. Let me tell you why it's that and why it's one of my favorites. So this bad boy right here was a huge step for Polaroid and one of their biggest collaborations. This is also the Polaroid 600SE. I'll get into it a little bit. Also known as the Goose, kind of the way it's spelled and laid out with the 600SE. This is the Goose right here. This was big because this was basically a flagship manual film instant camera for Polaroid. They had a bunch of other stuff out there, the land cameras, all that kind of stuff. But this is one that really kind of gave the pros something big, gave them something awesome. And it really kind of looked back to how Mamiya had a lot of their press cameras, and basically they look the same. And why they look the same is because, well, they pretty much made this for Polaroid. And in that sense, there needed to be a little bit of something different, and that's why this makes it awesome as well. And one of the big things that separated this from like Mamiya, for example, is that this has an interchangeable lens options. This has a couple options. You can take off, change lenses, and you can have some fun with that. I'll get more into that in a little bit too. But that's what makes this very unique and fun to shoot with, and why I say it's one of their best. So be it their flagship model now, this is a fully manual control camera, like a lot of film cameras were. But a lot of the stuff you need, shutter mechanisms, aperture, shutters, is basically on the lens. And really all you have on the body is just the shutter trigger. You have to, screw in the actual trigger into the lens right here, because that way when you, engage it, that's the way you get it to work. So it's fully manual, which makes it really fun. And if you can kind of tell here, it's rangefinder-like. It's a rangefinder. So, with parallaxing, you got to line it up and everything. And that's how you, get your shot in focus and everything. But like I said, the cool part is there are a couple lenses you can get with this bad boy right here. There is the normal one, which is this one right here. The 127mm, kind of standard lens. It was used a lot for, close-up portraits, driver's license, passports, etc. But then they had other couple options as well. They have a pretty hard to find now 75mm wide-angle lens, which is interesting because the only way to use it and to view it is you needed to have a separate viewfinder up top. You have to mount it to the top because on the back of this camera, you have grid lines for two options right here. The 127 and their telephoto lens, the 150. So you switch between both of those depending on what lens you have on here, and that's how you get the proper grid lines and the framing that you need. So they have 75 and 150mm, so it's a very unique camera and a unique setup for doing more, instant type film. And nowadays, the film you use for it is kind of hard to come by, and it's rather expensive, and it's pretty much all expired at this point. The film that I have is about, 3-4 years out of date, because I decided to pick up on a little collection before I knew it was going to get tough. But one of the most common ones you'll see is from, obviously, Fujifilm. It's one of the biggest pack film. You'll have the FP100C, which the 100 and the number stands for your ISO speed. And C, be it color, there is a B for black and white. And an even more expensive and more popular, even harder to find, FB3000B, which 3000 being 3000 ISO, black and white. So there were some good options out there. I complained when this was $25, $30 for 10 shots, a couple of years ago when I first got this thing. But now you could find these for like $80 to $100 a box. You learn to appreciate, what you got to go through to use this type of stuff for fun. But over the years, and even back in the day, people were figuring out ways that you can mod the back of these cameras, different adapters and mounts and brackets to use different types of film. So people nowadays use, all depending on whatever they want. They use the new Instax film with new adapters and 3D printing stuff. So it's really cool what you can do to the back of these. I may want to adapt this to do SX70 film eventually, but as of right now, I like using it the way it is with the current film stock that I have. So I'm going to leave it that way. But That's what makes this very, very fun. The one big thing you'll notice though is that this is a very, very heavy and bulky camera. I mean, it's pretty rough. I think it's almost, what, 4 or 5 pounds, you know, with and without a lens too. So like it was around 3 to 5 pounds alone just lugging this bad boy around. So it is pretty heavy. Now, as I said, it is a very manual, fully manual camera. There's no light metering, so you have to do that externally. I don't have an actual light meter anymore, but there is an awesome app that you can get on like the iPhone. I don't know if it's for Android. I haven't checked the Pixel, but I use a light meter. And what it does, it essentially gives you what you need. You put in the ISO and stuff at the bottom, what shutter, what aperture you're using, and then it gives you the approximation of what shutter and stuff you want to use, etc. So basically, when you're using this, what I like to do is obviously you put in the speed of the film that you're using because that's not going to change. And what I do is I put in the aperture I want to shoot at, and then it'll tell you the shutter speed you should be around. And to be fair, this app does a very decent job kind of getting it right. I feel like it overexposes a little bit, so I tend to, you know, I tend to push it just a little bit more, but it's a very good option if you don't have an actual light meter, which I think is very beneficial for something like this. So what I like to do before actually setting my exposure on the camera is I like to make sure that the shutter works. It connects via, you know, a trigger right here that screws into the shutter. And I like to actually pre-engage it right here. So I set it because what that does is it opens the option to see your shutter speed and everything that you need. Other than that, it like sits on top. So then you set it like that, say whatever, and then that's it. You're good to go. You have it engaged, you're ready to go. Boom, you're done. Take your shot, you know, pull the lead, get your exposure out, let it sit forever how long, and you're good to go on that front. So very easy camera to use, very fun. But like I said, that's what makes this stuff very, very interesting. And there you go. That's the end of what I was doing today. And even for having expired film, half of my photos were pretty decent. A couple of them were kind of scuffed. They didn't come out well. My rollers were clean and everything. I'm guessing that's just because it was expired. But, you know, expired film, especially stored properly, should last a couple of years or a while for that matter. But the Polaroid 600SE is an absolute blast. But the Polaroid 600SE is a legend in itself. I learned about this camera from Chase Jarvis, and ever since I saw him use it on one of his shoots, or he was showing off a lot of his film cameras in his collection, I was like, I have to get that. So back in like 2017, I found this camera on eBay, and I got it for like $200 with the lens. So this camera in very, very good condition, you can find for $300, $400, $500, $600 with the lens, etc. And then you could go from there. So it's a legendary camera. Just something I wanted to share with you. The Polaroid 600SE is a goose. And just how I was able to go outside for the first time really in a while to the park, you know, with everything going on, the current, you know, changes and everything positively. And have a little bit of good time, shoot with this. And it's cool. The film, like I was saying, even though some of it's kind of scuffed, the colors are awesome. The focus is great for what it is. And the 127mm lens, even at 4.7, which is the lowest that it'll go, is pretty tack sharp, but pretty fun. Have you ever used something like this? Have you ever heard or saw of a type of camera like this? Let me know down in the comments below. What's some of your favorite instant film cameras? Let me know. Let's have a talk. Let's have some fun. But the goose is on the loose.